Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Priyanka Neela Krishnan Show with me, Priyanka Neela Krishnan. I'm an enterprise data security product leader, author, and speaker. Couple of my security books include Autonomous Data Security. The second book is Jailbreaking LLMs. This is Enterprise Security Series, episode 56, and today's topic, when the breach has your name on it. Alright, before we start, my standing note. This is my independent commentary, my own views not tied to any employer, product, or vendor, and nothing here is legal advice. Today, we are talking about the person who carries the risk. The security leader's role changed underneath everyone. It stopped being purely technical and became accountable, with names attached, sometimes in regulatory filings. Over the next 15 minutes, I'll trace how that shift happened and what it really means for anyone who owns cyber risk, and how to move from being the lonely gatekeeper to being the leader who made the whole business own its risk. This is where the arc has been heading all along. Let us finish it. For most of its history, the security leader's job was technical. Keep the attackers out. Then the ground shifted. Regulators started naming individuals. A breach became a disclosure event with legal weight and sometimes a personal one. The role quietly changed from technical gatekeeper to accountable business leader. And a lot of people are still doing the old job while carrying the new liability. This is the close of the recent few episodes of the arc, and it is about the person who carries the risk. I am Priyanka Neela Krishnan, Enterprise Data Security Product Leader, author, and speaker. Once again, my books include Autonomous Data Security, Jailbreaking LLMs, Problem Pioneering. Let us talk about the accountability. Let me name a shift that has happened gradually enough that many people living through it have not fully registered it because it was so gradual. The security leader's role changed underneath them. For most of its history, the job was fundamentally technical. Understand the threats, deploy the defenses, keep the attackers out. Success was measured in incidents prevented, and when a breach happened, it was treated as an operational failure to be fixed. That is still part of the job, and it will always be like that. But something got added on top, and it changed the nature of the role. Security stopped being purely a technical job and became an accountable one with names attached. Cyber risk climbed to the top of the organization. It became a board level concern, a regulatory concern, and in some cases, a matter of personal legal exposure for the people responsible. So the job is no longer just keep the attackers out. It is own the organization's cyber risk, make it legible to the people who ultimately answer for it, and be prepared to answer for it yourself. And here is the tension that this creates, and that this episode is really about. A lot of talented people are still doing the old job, the technical one they trained for and love, while quietly carrying the new liability, the accountability that got attached to the role without much fanfare. That gap between the job you think you have and the accountability you actually carry is where a lot of security leaders are exposed right now, and most of them have not fully reckoned with it. Let me contrast the two versions of this role directly. On the left side is the old CISO, the technical gatekeeper. The job was to deploy the defenses, keep the attackers out, and if a breach happened, lead the response and fix what failed. Success was measured on prevention. This person lived deep in the technology, was very rarely in the boardroom, and was almost never named personally in anything. They were, in organizational terms, a senior technical expert. On the right is the new CISO, the accountable risk leader. This person still cares about all the technical work, but the center of gravity of the job has moved. Now it is about owning the organization's cyber risk as a business risk, translating it into terms the board can understand and act on, and being prepared to answer for it, sometimes to regulators, sometimes by name in a legal filing. This is a genuinely different job, requiring different skills. The old job rewarded technical depth. The new job still requires that, but adds business fluency, communication, legal awareness, and the ability to operate at the executive level. And the reason this matters so much is that the accountability arrived whether or not the person was ready for it. You do not get to opt out of the right column by preferring the left. The liability attached to the role. The only choice is whether you step into the new job deliberately or get caught carrying its risk while still operating as if you held the old one. Here is the moment that crystallized this shift for the entire profession. A few years ago, a US regulator, the Securities and Exchange Commission, charged a company's chief information security officer as an individual by name in connection with the company's cybersecurity disclosures around a major breach. It was the first time a US regulator had ever done that to an individual security chief. And it sent a shockwave through the field because it made the abstract idea of personal accountability suddenly vividly concrete. A named person facing personal legal exposure over how cybersecurity risk was represented. Now, there is important nuance, and I want to be accurate about it. That case was largely dismissed, and by late 2025, the remaining claims against the individual were dropped. So it did not end up establishing the sweeping personal liability that many feared in the moment. If you are a security leader, that dismissal is genuinely reassuring, and it narrowed the specific legal theory involved. But here is why the case still matters, and why I'm opening the slide with it. The dismissal did not reverse the underlying shift. The expectation environment around security leaders did not go back to how it was. Regulators remain focused on cybersecurity. They have stood up dedicated units for it. And the broader trend of holding senior leaders accountable for cyber failures and disclosures continues. The specific case resolved. The accountability shift it signaled is here to stay. The genie of personal accountability, once out, does not go back in the bottle just because one case was dismissed. Two markers that show this is a trend, not a single dramatic case you can dismiss as an outlier. First, in 2022, the former security chief of a major technology company was criminally convicted in connection with how he handled a data breach, specifically around concealing it. That is personal criminal exposure, not just corporate liability for decisions made in a security leadership role. Whatever you think of the specifics of that case, it established that the person in the chair can face consequences as an individual, and that fact reshaped how many security leaders think about documentation, escalation, and honesty in incident handling. Second, in 2025, even as that first individual CISO securities case was winding down, the SEC stood up a dedicated unit focused on cyber and emerging technologies. So the regulator was not retreating from the space. It was investing in it, building specialized capability to pursue exactly these kinds of matters. But those two markers together and the direction is clear. Personal accountability for security leaders is not a passing scare from one lawsuit. It is a sustained trend reinforced across criminal and regulatory fronts, and the infrastructure to pursue it is being built out, not dismantled. Not at all. Now, I do not share this to frighten anyone out of the profession. I share it because the appropriate response to a real trend is not fear, it is preparation. And preparation is very much within your control, which is exactly where we are going next. So here is the reframe, and it is the constructive heart of this episode, because I do not want you leaving with this feeling like a target. Accountability is not the same as blame. Those two things get conflated, and the conflation is what makes security leaders feel like they are being set up to be scapegoats. Blame is what happens when something goes wrong and everyone points at one person. Accountability, done right, is something else entirely. It is ownership of a risk paired with the authority and the transparency to manage it properly. The real job of the modern security leader is not to personally guarantee that no breach ever happens, because that is impossible, and any accountability model built on that premise is a trap. The real job is to make the organization's cyber risk legible to the people who ultimately own it, the executive team and the board, so that they can make informed decisions about it, fund it appropriately, and share the accountability that is rightfully theirs. You should not be the lonely gatekeeper who gets blamed when the inevitable happens. You should be the leader who made the entire business see its risk clearly, understand it in their own terms, and own their part of it. That is the difference between being a scapegoat and being an executive. The scapegoat absorbs blame for a risk nobody else looked at. The executive distributes accountability by making the risk everyone's business. Your job is to become the second thing, deliberately before an incident forces the question. 3 moves for your Monday. And these are about protecting both your organization and yourself. First, report risk in business terms. This connects to an earlier episode in the series about speaking the board's language. Translate your cyber risk into money and into decisions the board can actually act on. Because legible risk is shared risk. When the board genuinely understands the risk in their own terms, they can own their part of it. When they do not, all the accountability defaults to you by omission. Making the risk legible is how you distribute the accountability to where it belongs. Second, get your protections in writing. If the role now carries personal accountability, then it must also carry personal protections. That means indemnification, coverage for legal defense costs, and clear reporting lines that document who knew what and who decided what. Security leaders should treat this as seriously as any other term of their role, because the accountability is real and the protections should be too. Do not carry the liability without the safeguards. Third, make disclosures accurate. Here is the single most important legal lesson from all these cases. Regulators are focused overwhelmingly on misrepresentation, not on the mere existence of a breach. They punish saying your security was strong when you knew it was not. So the protective discipline is simple to state and hard to live. Make sure what your organization says publicly about its security is true, supported by internal documentation and consistent with what you actually know. Accurate disclosure is your best legal protection, and it is entirely within your control. Let me close this episode and this whole arc by trying this thread together. The name on the breach might be yours. That is the reality of the modern security role, and I opened with it not to frighten you, but to be honest with you. But the response to that reality is not to hide or to hold blame or to try to personally prevent every possible incident, which cannot be done. The response is to change what kind of leader you are. Stop being the lonely gatekeeper standing at the perimeter and become the leader who made the entire business see and own its risk. And notice how everything in this arc has been building toward exactly that. We started by saying you cannot protect what you cannot see and spend these episodes on finding your data, minimizing what you keep, governing who can reach it, securing how your systems talk, and verifying who is really on the call. Every one of those is about making risk visible and governable instead of hidden and ungoverned. This episode is the same idea aimed at the top of the house. Make the organization's risk visible to the people who own it so that accountability is shared, informed, and honest instead of landing alone on one person after the fact. That is where the series has been heading all along. See your data, govern your access, and share the accountability so that when the hard day comes, and someday it will, the whole organization is standing behind the name on the breach because you made sure they were part of the risk long before it became a headline. Thank you for following with me. I'm Priyanka Neela Krishnan. I'm an enterprise data security product leader, author, and speaker. Once again, my books include Autonomous Data Security, Jailbreaking LLMs, and Problem Pioneering. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay secure, be happy. Bye, everybody. I'll give you a few seconds to glance over this reference slide. This is where I got some of the content and data points for my presentation today. All right, this was episode 56, and that is the arc. Across these 10 episodes, the last 10, we followed one idea everywhere it went. You cannot protect what you cannot see. To the data hiding in your own estate, the records you should have deleted, the insiders who already hold the keys, the breaches you configure yourself, the apps you approved and forgot, the encryption with an expiry date, the session stolen after login, the machines talking over APIs, the voice on the call that was not real, and finally to the person accountable when it all goes wrong. See your data, govern your access, share the accountability. Thank you for following this arc with me. This is me, Priyanka Neela Krishnan. It means a lot to me. If it changed how you think about even one of these, please do subscribe and share it with someone who needs it, and tell me in the comments which episode landed hardest. I read them all, and this is me, Priyanka Neela Krishnan. I'm an independent commentary provider on enterprise data security, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay happy. Bye.